This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. Fast to finger down. Stars tonight together. Here everyone is singing.
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate for January 4th, 2022. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or on our own dedicated podcast feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can follow us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. If you'd like to donate to the show, you just click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our Red Circle landing site. You just click our red box that says sponsor this podcast and accept a one-time or recurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank all of our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal. I'm Mike Spears, joined alongside my friend and co-host, Case. Hello, and Case, of course, we have to talk about the biggest debut of the day. You know, I mean, it's January 4th as we're recording it. It is basically the first big wrestling day of the year. And what bigger debut happened today, more so than Ho-Ho Loon and AEW Dark?
I have so much wrestling that I want to talk about today that has nothing to do with Dragongate, one of which being Ho-Ho Loon at AEW. What a fun, dark match. I thought he fit in very well. I thought he sold very well for Sammy Guevara. Ho-Ho, hopefully next time he's in America, he gets into the commentary booth to be with Excalibur and Taz. Taz was critical during that match of Ho-Ho's lack of urgency, but I think as we've seen over the past few years, it's better when the match comes to Ho-Ho. He will find his pace as things go along, and he very much did in that Sammy Guevara match.
Hey, if Tony Khan wants Ho-Ho to wrestle some urgency, here's the thing. You have to put things on the line. If there's no Clorox wipes or, Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, I mean, we're not dealing in a world that Sponge Guy has, planted his flag in the United States yet, so no Clean Pa toilet wipes. But you got to put something at stake if you really want to get the fire out of Ho-Ho Loon. I thought that it was a really fun dark match. The thing that I really kind of took me aback is I think Sammy's GTH reverse go to sleep kick usually looks awful, but Ho-Ho Loon has done the best sell of the GTH that I've seen so far in the company. So, I mean, good for Ho-Ho there. I thought that rocked in. Taz was on one tonight, and it's just imagining how much fun Taz and Ho-Ho Loon could have in the commentary booth together, and we missed out on that today.
Taz was on one tonight. Ho-Ho Loon was on one tonight. Let's talk about the other elephant in the room, a question that I've been dying to ask you for a little over 12 hours now. We haven't really talked much today, so I have pontificated. I've done some in-depth internet research to try to figure out the answer to this question. I have come up with nothing. I am dying to know your thoughts on if Shima was in the Tokyo Dome when the Wrestle Kingdom 16 main event started.
It's a good thing it's a big building. That's a very, very big building.
Because there are passionate El Desperado fans out there. He could have seen Hiromu versus Despy, saw the 3 count, rubbed his hands together, said, "Linda, warm up the car. We're out of here." And that story would not surprise me at all.
Yeah. Did get a funny DM to wake up to. Of course, I did not watch Wrestle Kingdom. I mean, that's early, and I don't stay up late to watch shows anymore. I did have a great DM saying at least they found a building large enough that could have Shingo and Shima in it at the same time without them killing each other. I mean, Dick Togo, say what you will. I mean, maybe he's the person that could heal some divides. And
I don't think so. Have you read about Dick Togo in New Japan? I don't think he's healing anything. I think he's tearing this company apart from the inside.
I mean, if somehow like one of the most mysterious severance of like a relationship in Dragon System history gets healed by Dick Togo, I don't care what's happening in New Japan. I have other things I'll say about New Japan later that'll get people really angry at me. Hi, this is the first show of 2022. In case knows, this is probably the one that I'm going to get yelled at the most. Is that right?
Yeah, Mike Spears shooting from the hip tonight, apparently. I like it. You're coming in with a bit of an edge. I was not expecting it. Much like I was not expecting Shima to show up at the Tokyo Dome this morning. I was telling Mike right before we started recording, I woke up and I saw the picture in the Voices of Wrestling Slack of Shima and Lindemann at the Dome, like the selfie they took, and I was just like, oh, cool, it's more power to them. They got invited to the Tokyo Dome show, and then was going about my morning. I was making my peanut butter and jelly that I eat every morning at about 3:55 Central Standard Time in the morning. That's how I start my days, with a nice PBJ. And
I respect that. I'm a big PB&J person, especially for like a breakfast. It actually works pretty well if I'm not like being my lizard brain and just having like the same power bar I've had for 10 years. Sometimes I'll get PB&J and it works pretty well.
It's the basic question to ask, but it is the question that must be asked. Mike Spears, and you're a weirdo, so you might have some like left field answer for me that I'm not anticipating, but what jelly are we using on the sandwich?
Strawberry.
Oh, this is why we do a podcast together, Mike Spears. That's what I like to hear. Of course you like strawberry jelly, as do I. So I'm preparing my daily peanut butter and jelly. I need this to hold me over until about 10 a.m. when I can eat again. And all of a sudden I go to Twitter and I see Shima dropping the knees, a Meteora like he's in his prime, knee injury dropping the Meteora onto Taka Michinoku, and I was so confused. I could not follow what was happening in the slightest, and now by the time people are listening to this, he will have had his second match, but now I've got to wrap my head around Shima, Toru Yano, Minoru Suzuki, and Chase Owens in the same match, and I can't handle that.
Yeah, that's I'm not going to try to parse that other than Dick Togo, trying to heal wounds. That's what I'm going to say, trying to heal wounds with that.
I will say, and did you watch any New Japan at all last year?
Do you want to know what was the last New Japan match I saw? Or first, take a guess. This will be fun.
Shinsuke Nakamura versus Kota Ibushi in 2015.
Man, give me some fucking credit. Second guess, and actually put some thought into it this time.
Was it Omega versus Tanahashi, that last Omega New Japan match?
No, it was Shingo versus Ospreay, best of the Super Juniors final.
Oh, well, one of the best matches of all time. So you picked a good time to get out on. That's everything. Actually, statistically, everything went downhill after that match. So you made the right decision in jumping off at that point. So you haven't seen really any of the Shingo versus Okada matches. All of them have been great in their own way, and I loved the match this morning. It went 35 minutes. It felt like it went 15, and on a personal level, as someone that started this podcast when Shingo was still in Dragongate and wished him well on his farewell, and I thought he would succeed in New Japan as an IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team Champion. Maybe he would get a run with the Junior Heavyweight title at one point, but to see him become the heavyweight champion of this promotion, despite the atrocities that might occur on the undercard, and to see him headline a Tokyo Dome show, even with the dreadful atmosphere that it was. And I hadn't watched New Japan in a little bit, and I was so taken aback by, obviously they're in this giant building, and that doesn't help things with the clap crowds, but the lack of ringside participation, not having seconds out there to just bang on the apron and make some noise the way a Genki Horiguchi or Susumu Yokosuka would in this company, was such a jarring thing to watch. With all that in mind, seeing Shingo in the main event of a Tokyo Dome show was a spectacle. It was really cool to see, and of course, just like he's done in every big match for the last 16 years, he delivered in the biggest spot. It was a thrilling match. I went 4.5 stars on it.
Yeah, this might be a controversial take, but I'm already gonna have things later on in the show that people get mad at me at, if not already. There's only one person that I would say probably has persevered and won the COVID era and all the fallout that's happened with it, it's Shingo Takagi. I mean, like, in no like normal universe, he would have headlined a Tokyo Dome, especially considering how things were in 2019. Like, it just could not have happened. And now, I mean, that's one of his boyhood dreams is main eventing the Tokyo Dome. He did that. I mean, yeah, Bryan Danielson is the wrestler of the year. I know the FSM 50 came out today. Bryan Danielson, doing great in that as well. By the way,
not my number one, not who I voted for in the SFM 50, but more power to the American Dragon. I was a Kenny Omega fan through and through. I really thought it was his year.
I think I would be Omega's I'm like the one person who remembers Omega versus Phoenix and remember that match really, really fondly.
That's the thing. Omega's first 3 months when he was doing
insane.
It was Omega versus Phoenix, and then he had all of the Seidel stuff where he had the singles match with Matt Seidel. I think there was a 6-man.
With Takeshita.
Yes, that's right. I forgot. Yes, that's right. He was doing all the stuff with the Seidels. He had the Lucha Brothers stuff in there, and it will never be remembered due to history, and it's a shame because everybody will think about the finish, and rightfully so, because it was the biggest atrocity in AEW history. But the exploding barbed wire match before the failed explosion was on its way to being my match of the year, and had that actually paid off, that would be a top 5 match for me this year. That match was ridiculous up until, of course, the colossal failure.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things that, like, we're already talking about Kenny Omega, and we haven't even talked about what we're really going to talk about on this show, but whatever, I'm here for it. It's something where he even then, like, followed it up. Like, I really like the triple threat match at Double or Nothing, but then again, you have Pac, and I feel like everyone at this point knows my opinion about Pac. So of course that's great. So yeah, it's just one of those things that, like, as someone who just I have actually, I'll tell you, when the last time I watched WWE, it was when Bryan Danielson returned. Like, that was it for me there. I was like, I'm good there then. So, like, cutting in for like that the last 4 months for me, it could not put him at my number one there, but I think Kenny Omega did enough over the year to really be my number one. How did we get going on this tangent? Oh yeah, Shingo. It just rocks. And Shingo's at a point, I think, in his career that, like, and the GWE 100 this year, like, I gave a very impassioned speech about who will always be my number one wrestler of all time, who, like, it's going to take something to completely unseat them, and that's Terry Funk. But number 2 is up for Shingo Takagi's taking, and I think this year, when we circle back around in a couple of years, and when I do go back and watch, like, this run he's had in over the year and as IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, number 2 is not out of reach for Shingo Takagi for me.
No, I've made a career in wrestling publications stealing Alan Forel's talking points and making them my own, and I will do the same thing here where, Alan was the first person that I'm aware of to really even consider Shingo as a top 10 or top 15 guy. I know when the GWE project launched in 2016, I voted Shingo at 21, and that almost felt very salacious to me, given, again, we've talked about the forum that project was hosted on a lot on this show, Pro Wrestling Only, where they're having debates over whether or not Wolfie D is a top 100 guy or not, and arguing over the best Mid-South squash matches, and those all have their validity. But for me to barrel in there as a 17-year-old at the time and go, actually, the Shingo Takagi guy is much better than all of your bad 80s wrestlers, was a very bold take. And it was one that, within that bubble, I certainly had to argue and break down in the micro form of, like, no, you don't understand. At the time, this being 2016, this guy's had 12 years of dominance. He debuted and he was good, and then he's only gotten better ever since. And that's a 12-year sample size. And now, 6 years removed from that, we're looking at a guy who's had over a 15-year career, where most of those years, if you were to do a list like this, whether you're ranking the 10 or 25 or 50 best wrestlers in the world, from 2005 onwards, it's going to be really hard to find a year, if you have any sort of global awareness of professional wrestling, to not have Shingo in your top 25 or top 50 at the very worst. To have him anywhere, if you were to, to list your 100 greatest wrestlers of all time and try to be objective about it in any way, and you didn't have Shingo on the list, I would need some sort of explanation. And it's probably not going to be a very good one, but if you can defend your point, I'll let you be. But at this point, I am glad that this New Japan run has given him that universal praise that he so much deserved. And I am glad that the conversation surrounding Shingo is not just, wow, this guy is really good, but wow, this guy is one of the best to ever do it. And he proved that in the Tokyo Dome today.
I just looked as you were talking there. Shingo only has one more spot to go up for me. So it's him or Mochi are going to be fighting out for number 2 in my books in 2026. And, Mochizuki, I have no doubt, will still be putting up bangers in 4 years. So, that's a spirited contest. But
let me ask you, while we're on the topic of Mochizuki, no, we're not going to get to our topic yet, Mike. Hold on.
I had a perfect segue there, man. You were talking about rookie debuts, and I was going to segue us into
hold your horses, Mike. We are not talking about Dragongate yet. Did you watch the January 1st Pro Wrestling Noah show?
No, of course not.
Did
you know what I have watched so far this year, Case?
What's that? Because I've got another question of a show. I'm wondering if you watched it or not yet. So go ahead, just spoil that for me now.
Tokyo Joshi Pro 22 last night. That was the January 4th show I watched.
I'm not. We're not talking about that on this show. I don't know what their business is. More power to them. I agree with the general consensus. Yes, Joshi was severely underrated in the SFM 50. We're working on that for next year. But this is not the Tokyo Joshi Pro podcast. Go do that somewhere else. With all due respect, Mike, I want to talk about Pro Wrestling Noah. I have the floor. And I am so annoyed. And it's not at Sean Ross Sapp, but he didn't help things. Tweeting out the gif of Ultimo Dragon killing it on the Noah show, and the flood of comments of like, oh, I didn't know this guy was still wrestling. This guy's so good. It's like, yeah, no shit. And he does this in Dragongate all the time. And I was so annoyed by that for some reason. I spent New Year's Eve alone in my apartment because there were 12,000 new COVID cases on December 30th. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I could invite friends over, and I'm not going to. I'm going to watch 0-1 and Pro Wrestling Noah instead. And Ultimo was the highlight of that show, at least the undercard for him, because he was marvelous. But I wish more people would take heed of the fact that he always has really fun multi-man matches in Dragongate.
Yeah, that's his bread and butter, to be quite honest. Yeah, no, I saw, and good for Abima, paying for separados. It's nice to have conglomerate money, being able to pay Jose Miguel for that.
Yeah, oh hell yeah, that Noah show, I have my issues with the promotion, to say the very least. I mean, the match that I loved so much on the undercard was that 8-man of Katoge, Harada, Ohara, and Ultimo against the Nozawa team of Nozawa, Yohei, Kotaro Suzuki, and Eita. Unfortunately, that match was followed by Kazuyuki Fujita and Kendo Kashin versus Ikuto Hidaka and Masakatsu motherfucking Funaki. And while I like the losing team, Hidaka and Funaki, a lot, going from Ultimo to Kendo Kashin and Fujita is why I struggle with Pro Wrestling Noah. That is too jarring for me, going from an all-time favorite wrestler to two least favorite wrestlers of all time. It was too much for me.
Yeah, it's something that Noah, and we'll get this later, Noah's going to be in a real interesting place as things open up. Like, I just saw that they only did 400 yesterday at Korakuen. Did you know how much I'm not going to hammer this down. Tokyo Joshi Pro did 695.
Damn, all right, good for Tokyo Joshi Pro. That's a nice little house. I was talking about on Twitter yesterday about how the January 2nd All Japan Korakuen show that was headlined by T-Hawk and Al Lindemann, that did 720 fans, and the show on the 3rd that was headlined by their guys Miyahara, Oshino, Suwama, and Aoyagi only did 701, and that is coming off of some dreadful houses in the back half of 2021 with Suwama and Jake Lee headlining and only putting 300 or 400 fans at Korakuen.
Really makes you think.
Well, let's talk about GLEAT for a second. Did you watch the year-end GLEAT show, Mike?
That's actually on my list, to be quite honest. That is because I want to see the Mascara contra Mascara match.
It's the only thing I watched on that show. I heard Soma Watanabe lost on the undercard, and that pisses me off because it seems like GLEAT is putting a lot of shine on Lindemann, which I think is great. I think long-term, Soma Watanabe needs to be the guy in that promotion, and I understand the idea of having him lose to veterans and having him build, him being built up through losses, but also you are GLEAT, you are in desperate need of an identity and a star, and I think he could be that guy, and he doesn't need to be losing right now. But the Strong Hearts versus Bulk Orchestra main event is essential viewing. It was phenomenal from start to finish. It was such a fun match because now that we've had 3.5 years of separation between CIMA and Dragongate, the big Dragongate multi-mans, they exist and they've taken on a new style almost, and seeing what was very clearly a CIMA orchestration and this big, complicated, so many rules, so many moving parts, multi-man style of match, it was such a throwback to a different time in Japan and a specific time in Dragongate when CIMA was pulling more strings. Because I saw so many spots in this match that I hadn't seen since May of 2018 when CIMA and T-Hawk and Lindemann left. Like, these were things straight from CIMA's greatest hits and his playbook in matches like this. And that is a system that works. That is the Bill Belichick system of pro wrestling. Whatever you think of CIMA and GLEAT, I don't know what to tell you. The fact is, this guy lands on his feet time after time again. And CIMA, T-Hawk, and L. Lindemann remain the biggest draws in Japan that are free agents. I mean, I think they are bigger draws than anybody on the All Japan roster. They were absolutely a business mover when they worked DDT. They were the only things that drew in Wrestle 1. I think if they went to Noah, they would have a positive impact on their business. It would be interesting to see what they can do if we get a Lindemann versus Despy singles match in New Japan. Like, they have been an abject positive in a business sense everywhere they've gone. And it's kind of my point. I know it's easy to dunk on them because it is a sad state of affairs to a degree, but they continue to be successful, even if it's not always the most aesthetically pleasing success there is.
It's something that I guess I'll talk about it here. I think that there's going to be a lot of questions as more of Japan venues are starting to open up. Of course, Korakuen's going to open up in April to full capacity, and I think by then we will see a big trickle down effect there. That a lot of these companies are going to need to have solid draws, and a lot of these companies, just looking at it, like Noah was down almost 1,000 people between their Budokan shows. One in February of last year, and then today, and then the New Year show, down 1,000. And it's going to get to a point that with you have Keiji Muto there paying Muto big money to do that. And yeah, Abema very much in Cyberfight, very much Noah's geared, trying to get eyeballs that from a generation that doesn't necessarily use their service. But I mean, you're going to have to start drawing these houses, and you're going to start needing these things. And you look at Strong Hearts eventually are going to need to find a home. Could it be New Japan? Probably not long term, given a lot of things. But Noah makes much sense to anything, and they're going to start getting people that will do this, because we saw Nakajima Go Shiozaki drew 1,000 less than Muto up top.
Which is horribly depressing. I mean, that is just an awful thing to think about, because those guys are so much better, and to me, on a personal level, so much more valuable than Muto, but the numbers speak for themselves.
Right, yeah. And I know that the easy answer is, we don't evaluate numbers in COVID. This is a direct year-to-year thing. During the same conditions, yes, you could evaluate this. You could choose not to, but I choose not to ignore things that have happened.
Well, if anything, we'll talk about it when we get to some of our match of the year stuff. I was rewatching a match from January in Korakuen Hall and Dragongate this past year, and it is startling how empty Korakuen is with those restrictions that were in place. If anything, things have gotten better in Japan year to year, so you would hope, if that's your logic, that Nakajima and Shiozaki would have drawn better, but unfortunately, they did not. Now, I will be curious to talk to you after you watch this GLEAT show, because that promotion made a little bit more sense to me after watching their year-end show here, in the sense that I don't know what money they're taking in. For all I know, T-Hawk and Lindemann and everybody else could be begging for money on street corners because GLEAT is just not paying the bills. But something about this promotion just made a little bit more sense to me, and their place in the ecosystem. After watching this show, you start to see some parts come together and some things come to fruition as, kind of a big budget indie, which I know is an oxymoron, but that's just kind of what they are, just given what they draw.
Which makes sense, given Ledette being behind it. Like, Ledette's previous ownership of, like, Noah and, like, promoting shows. It makes sense that they would be able to do this. My big question about that is what happens when you, like, full capacity and you can't just write off these things because they run an insane amount.
Their schedule has really picked up, because it seemed like for a while they were just, their shows would happen and then they would go away for a little bit, and now they are running a pretty full schedule. And yeah, I'm dying to know when things open up what kind of drawing power they have, because I really have no idea. I ultimately still think their home is AAA, and if things align in a way that makes it convenient for them to bounce to Mexico again, like they were going to do right before the world shut down, we will see those three in Mexico for an extended period of time. So to me, that's their out. And as far as I know, I wouldn't see any reason why that wouldn't be on the table. It's obvious that AAA is going to need draws when the world opens back up, and I think the Strong Hearts quartet, if you want to throw in the young guy, could be that draw.
Yeah, I guess, like, my only way of pushing back is that foreigners usually don't draw in AAA. Like,
that is true.
That's the thing, is that, like, we've seen, like, with AEW participation, it hasn't been super great for them. And I mean, the fans just don't know. Like, they had to have Conan come out with the Young Bucks so that they knew how to react to them. So, like, that's the question there. Like, when I, like, look at Elite, and yeah, they're running Tokyo Dome City Hall, which was an incredibly expensive venue that no one ran before COVID. Like, remember, like, Wrestle One, when it booted up, like, they were the first show at Tokyo Dome City Hall, and then no one ran there. And they got 803 there, which is bigger than the capacity you can get at Corkin right now. So you would think, like, 1-to-1, that should be close to a Corkin sellout, but that's like their big show and they're a Corkin, and that would be a Corkin sellout.
Yeah.
And you look at the names on this roster, like, and here's the thing. I think they're paying pretty well given Shima's there and given other big names. They're giving Kaz Hayashi's there. And
that's my fear, is you pay Shima, you pay Kaz Hayashi, you pay Minoru Suzuki to come in and do a guest appearance. How much more money is left at that point? And that is my concern.
Right, yeah. No, and I mean, Shuji Ishikawa. I mean, maybe not, like, commanding the wallet being thrown at him, but I mean, Matsukatsu Funaki, Minoru Tanaka, like these are names that, I mean, take in some money in, and I don't think that El Lindemann and T-Hawk are getting the short shrift either. So, like, those are the questions there. And it's one of those things that, like, I find this topic, like, overall fascinating. And I think it's one of those things that when you, like, look at Japanese wrestling coming out of this, it's going to be I would say, mid-major to major promotion has a lot of questions coming into 2022. And Dragongate's none the different. Like, Dragongate probably has, in some ways, maybe the most perilous questions for the next 10 years of the promotion when you compare it to the conglomerate funded promotions,
Well,
So
do you think, from a talent perspective, and I'll let you go on this because I know you want to talk about this at some point. There's no reason I'm holding off on it. Let's just rip the Band-Aid off now. What is your feeling of Dragongate's next 5 to 10 years compared to New Japan's and the futures that they have lined up as of now?
All right, you just nice fat ball over the plate for me, Case.
I do what I can, Mike.
What a great co-host, I just have to say here. Like, because you look at this, and we've talked about this case, right? The idea that, like, yes, Kness has announced his retirement. Masato Yoshino retired last year, and we've been kind of banging the drum that's like, this is the transitional time. This is the transitional time. So that's why it's been so important that, like, Shoon Skywalker had the year he did. Eita had the year he did in 2020. SB Kento has been just breaking every expectation one can have if you have someone who doesn't turn 22 until February. And you look at that, and Dragon Gate's laying down the groundwork now for what happens in 2027. Because in 2027, like we made the comment about Masaki Mochizuki, but you look at, like, the roster, and you look at, like, it's not like that everyone who is a Torimon generation, it doesn't have a lot of miles on them. Like, Ryo Saito took over as GM, he doesn't wrestle as much anymore. Genki Horiguchi, famously before COVID, basically scaled back to just TV shows. Now, some of that also could be personal life stuff. Genki Horiguchi, famous girl dad.
Hashtag girl dad, Genki Horiguchi.
Yeah. But yeah, they had to prepare for this because the fan base is so insular and is so dedicated to those Toryumon wrestlers that they've seen now for 23 years that you have to prepare them for the eventuality of, all right, these guys are eventually going to retire. Some of them might come around and we might have like a good time Dragon Rumble at a Kobe World 2027 where you get to see people, come out of retirement for the night, and that'll be nice, and it'll be an air of good feelings there for that match. But you have to have the fan base accepting your stars, your young stars, because that's who you're going to have headlining these shows. The company will be on their backs by then, and they've been laying the groundwork there. And I think, as you said, compare contrast, I have New Japan, and here's where the first time people will yell at me. I think New Japan's talent development program is atrocious. I think it's completely just rooted in the Showa era of, all right, we could have these people, just eat pens and wrestle 5-minute matches against 50-year-olds for 3 years, and then they go on excursion, they come back, and then we start pushing them. Look at like I'm just gonna like pull up the card from today, Case,
please,
and we're gonna go through some of these names on the card. Do you think Minoru Suzuki is going to be full-time in New Japan in 2027?
He might not be full-time in New Japan in 2022.
Hiroshi Tenzan.
No, sir.
Satoshi Kojima.
I hope so, but no.
Toki Makabe.
No.
Yuji Nagata.
I hope so, but no.
And then moving away from the Rambo, this will be a controversial one. Katsuyori Shibata. Do you think he'll be full-time in 5 years?
He might be full-time, but I'm not convinced to any degree that he's a giant business mover. I don't know. When he got hurt, it seemed like he was on an upward trajectory and like maybe he could make a difference, but it is a guy who has either never been placed in the top spot, meaning his most recent run in New Japan, or, and it's not an apples to apples comparison, but was when he was placed on top, which was Big Mouth Loud, it was an abject failure.
Right.
Now, of course, the industry is completely different. He was a completely different wrestler then that he was in 2013 to 2017. And we, other than a few G1 shows, never got to see him headline. But I need some sort of evidence that he is going to move tickets at a rate of an Okada or a Tanahashi or a Naito or even a Jay White.
We will get to those names in a second. Tomohiro Ishii, do you think he will be a full-time top liner in 5 years?
I'll say yes, just for the Mochizuki possibility of the fact that he will not die.
I mean, WAR guy makes sense,
Yes.
That there's a lot of...
It was in the water.
Yeah, he was in the water there. Yeah. All right, here comes the big ones. I think Kazuchika Okada will be a headliner in 5 years, but do you think he's going to be that he's going to be at this level in 5 years?
I think I'm going to say yes, with the caveat that if he is still their 1A in 5 years, I think that is cause for concern.
You're starting to see where I'm going with this. Tetsuya Naito in 5 years. Where do you think he will be at?
I don't know, selling a lot of t-shirts somewhere. I mean, he has no knees. I don't know at this point what his body can take. If he's able to go, if he's active, he will be at the top of the card 5 years from now, but I don't know if his body will allow him to do so.
And along the same lines, I had the same question about Hiromu Takahashi.
I'm so out on Hiromu at this point, and it's not his fault. He's not the same wrestler that he was, and it's a victim of expectations where, yes, it's probably unfair of me to compare 2017 Hiromu to 2022 Hiromu, but it is so clear, given the wear and tear that he's put himself through, that he's not the same wrestler. At his current state, he's an above average junior, but he was, in 2017, 2018, one of the best wrestlers in the world, and he was not someone that I don't think anybody in the SFM 50 voted for, or maybe they did. Let me double check that real quick, because perhaps I'm way off. No, well, Hiromu was an honorable mention this year, and more power to him. But like I talked about in the spring of this year, when I started talking about Jason Lee being the best junior in Japan. I said I think he's better than Despy. I think he's better than Robbie Eagles. I think he's better than any of the quote-unquote junior heavyweights on the Dragongate roster. My only asterisk there is he better than Hiromu? And at the time Hiromu was injured, well, from what I've seen of Hiromu since he returned, I think Jason Lee is a far better wrestler.
That's fair. That's fair. All right, here comes the big ones. Do you think Hiroshi Tanahashi will be at that level in 5 years?
I lean no, but it's Tanahashi, so anything's possible.
So I just listed natives, and I did that for a reason, Case. Because if anything in New Japan's recent history has taught us, and given like rumbling and stuff like this, I don't think there is a reasonable expectation to believe that your Ospreys will be there in 5 years. I don't think it's a reasonable expectation to think that Jay White will be there next year. I think that you list all these names and they're not going to be around there. And then you take a look at their dojo system. How is the dojo system prepare themselves for the eventuality of that? Like, yeah, Okada will be around there, but if Okada is still on top in 5 years and you don't have someone that's like beating Okada and putting his stamp down saying, this is my era we're in now, that's it. Like, this New Japan era, that Case, you very appropriately and with like Nostradamus like clarity called being over in 2020. In 5 years, it could be a real big problem for them. And seeing how the promotion just kind of seems to be, and this is I'm laying my cards out here. I fully believe that if Dragon Gate does not make this transition that it seems like they're making right now, there will not be a Dragon Gate going past the retirement of the Toryumon generation. Just to be clear, I'm just trying to make sure that no one can say, "Oh, Mike's saying is biased." No, I think Dragon Gate's in the most tenuous situation of all. But New Japan does not set up their talent system, their young lions for stuff like you like look at this, like Narita coming back still as a young boy, basically. You had, how long was it that it felt like that Sho and Yo were away on excursion, Hiromu away on excursion, taking all those bumps, like the amazing Dragon Lee feud. Like, don't get me wrong, one of the best feuds of the last decade. I think that's without any argument whatsoever. But those are some miles that are being put on his body that we've seen got added up a whole lot, and I think it's a reasonable argument to be made that those Dragon Lee matches probably, took some months off his career in a way. And you enter the system there and you compare and contrast it with someone like SB KENTo, who they immediately recognize who he was. They're like, all right, we think this kid, there's certain things he still needs to figure out. He could figure it out as he's being pushed upwards. And ending the year in a way where, like I keep on saying this, Case, we have to recalibrate our expectations for Kento Kabune, and they don't have the possibility to do that because they're so tied into this, I don't want to say ancient, but like their historical way of thinking and talent development that is going to have them enter a phase where I don't think they're going to be in a good place in 5 years.
I want to make a few different points off that. First of all, let me take a victory lap. I want a handwritten apology from any person that doubted me when the 2020 Voices of Wrestling New Japan ebook came out, and I said that the golden era of this promotion was dead. Because guess what? There was no ebook this year. You fucking morons. Of course I was right about that. That was the easiest thing I ever wrote, was how bad New Japan was. And I know there's a lot of people that still think that, hey, once we can return to some normalcy in Japan, that New Japan's problems are going to fix itself. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. But let me defend New Japan for a second. Because, Mike, if we were doing this podcast in January of 2012, 10 years ago, and you and I came on here to preview Blood Warriors versus Junction 3, the finale, and what is Shima going to do now that he has the Open the Dreamgate Championship, and we had the same conversation, none of us would have been able to see that on February 12th, 2012, Okada would have beat Tanahashi for the title and went on the now decade-long run that he's gone on. New Japan still has Yua Uemura, and for all we know, they could have had a young lion enter the dojo yesterday that could change wrestling. But like you said, it's tough for me to criticize the New Japan talent development because it is their 50th anniversary and they have survived tragedy after tragedy after tragedy after business failure after business failure after business failure, and they're still here and they're still number one. It seems like, in a way, just to make that comparison of Dragongate to New Japan, where New Japan has become the high school varsity athlete. They are number one, and for good reason, and they've built up this really impressive pedigree. But if you ask them for a 5-year plan, they're going to struggle to come up with answers. I don't know what their next step is, let alone their next 5 steps. Dragongate is, again, not the flashiest promotion right now. We've seen that with Western interest, with all of these new faces, all of these new names coming in, even guys like SB KENTo. It's going to take time, whether I agree with it or not. It is going to take time for English-speaking fans to latch onto these guys in a casual way. The same way they eventually did with your Yamatos and your BB Hulks and your Shingos and your Tozawas. But if you look at the Dragongate 5-year plan, there was clear and obvious direction, not only with their guys under 25, which they have an entire fleet of, but their guys under 30, which they have an entire fleet of. I trust their future from a creative perspective and a talent development perspective far more than I trust New Japan's, even if business-wise, 5 years from now, I expect New Japan and Dragongate to be in the same position as they are now, 1 and 2 in Japan.
Yeah, I mean, that's also the advantage of having conglomerates behind you. Like, I'm not trying to sound like an angry Dragongate fan about why people don't pay attention to this promotion. I completely understand why, probably more so than most, but it's just one of those things that you take a step back and you look at the talent development there, and I think you really hit on it about under 30. So someone that people are really high on and historically have been very high on in New Japan is Yo. Do you know how old Yo is?
He's 33, isn't he?
Dead on, 33.
And I, at one point, had a ton of Yo stock and also had a ton of Show stock, and I could not get rid of that fast enough now. Those guys
32.
are not it.
Show's 32.
I really thought those guys were going to be it, with Yo as a sort of junior ace and Show as someone that could legitimately make heavyweight challenges in the future, and I just don't see that happening now.
So it's just one of those things that you look at that, you look at how I mentioned Noah now. I mean, you've paid all this for Muto and you've seen how the houses have dropped. You got Muto to bring in viewers. Now you need Muto to sell tickets. We're going to need to see that. Stardom's done great. Well, I'm going to call it sandwich this. Stardom has done great under Bushi Road ownership. They also have been a very solid beneficiary of what it means when the Bushi Road money machine goes burr in a lot of ways. Case, you've talked about how poorly they've done outside of when they've tried to go into new eras or areas like Tohoku, like Sendai. It's about time to see if the money machine is actually taking, if that makes sense. It feels like it has a lot of momentum. They do a lot of smart things, especially for how they market, and it falls greatly in line with what Bushi Road's primary business is. But it's time to see Stardom does that. And it's time for Stardom's talent acquisition is a lot like New Japan's in a way that Stardom hasn't had someone debut since 2019, I think. It's insane. And you have to kind of see them be able to do that. I think that if anyone has the opportunity to really boom out of a COVID saying, I said compliment sandwich, it will be Stardom. Because Stardom it just makes sense in a lot of different ways. But you guys see if the money machine's taking. All Japan. How mean should I be, Case? You know what I'm about to say. You know what I really want to say. But you know what? This is the one thing I'm going to hold my time on. All Japan exists because they have the Triple Crown title and Kento Miyahara.
And T-Hawk and El Lindemann.
I mean, are they sticking around now that that Lindemann seems to be next in line for Despy?
They did just drop their titles.
Well, but those Sato twins, right? Those Sato twins.
Jake Lee, I hope you heal up soon, and we'll see if you can draw when you come back from injury.
It was, so you have that. DDT is like a watch, in my opinion. They're going to be fine.
DDT, we'll have the same conversation 5 years from now, and it will still be, in Tokyo, they do a bang-up job. They are probably number 2 in Tokyo. let me know anywhere else in the country how they do.
Yeah, no. So that's it for that. I think I had like one other like thing that we were talking about this that I wanted to touch on before we move on and actually get to the Dragongate portion of the show. All right, New Japan, Dragongate. Yeah. The interesting thing with Dragongate, again, like the crossover with like the new generation, but it's also going to be the local expansion. You know, like that's a very underserved market. It's of course not as prosperous as Tokyo area. I mean, Tokyo, I don't know right now, but they're either one or number two in like the largest metropolitan areas in the world. Like it makes sense why all these companies are Tokyo based. But going to the places where it's underserved, like Tohoku, like getting the show that they got in Nagoya to close out the year, like that will be a very interesting thing to go forward. And yeah, those are like my big things of, all right, that's it. That's Mike's everyone get mad at him section of the show, I think. Was there anything else you wanted to cover about this or you wanted to ask me before we move on?
Well, yes, I have one final question because, Dragongate is not the only promotion that is looking to expand to all parts of Japan, because on January 3rd of this year, Kyushu Pro ran in Tokyo for the first time. Shinjuku Face, they drew a no vacancy house of 242 fans. It looked packed on camera. The show is up on YouTube with a Mentai Kid in Sugi versus Taro Nohashi and Kagatora Torimon X reunion match that was billed as such. I am so bummed out, Mike, that this show did not happen in 2015, because here's what would have happened if this show would have happened in 2015. Somebody would have watched it, and because it aired this week of all weeks, some Euro, someone from Finland or wherever the fuck, would have taken it upon themselves to become the Kyushu Pro guy on Twitter. And they would have made their avatar Mentai Kid, and while Shingo and Okada were killing it in the Dome this morning, they would have gone like, yeah, this is fine, but Mentai Kid could work circles around these guys, and I'm so bummed that Japanese wrestling interest is just so low right now that we don't have somebody to take that, dare I say, gimmick for Twitter purposes, because that is absolutely a guy that would have existed 4 or 5 years ago. But hey, Kyushu Pro, 242 fans in Tokyo, that is a great thing to see.
Yeah, that Kyushu is one of those like micro indies. The fact that they're able to do that, and who knows what that means, if this is like a one-time thing or if they'll be like, hey, maybe we can come by once a year, like how Michinoku Pro has their traditional like Cork and batshit insane show. It'll be nice to see, especially from like as we've been talking about, underserved area, like Fukuoka area, and like they've got a lot of talent in that promotion. So that's really cool to see them kind of take off there. And then, I mean, you even have like promotions popping up like Zeus's Osaka Pro, where it seems like he's gotten a whole lot of the gang back together. That'll be fascinating to see how they do and if they decide to try to make Tokyo excursions after they're built up in a way.
The Torimon X reunion match was fun. I would recommend it if you have not seen it.
Oh yeah, for sure. I guess then, Case, it's probably about time to actually talk about what we were planning on talking about on this show. So this is this typically would be buffet, but this is our award show. We do have 2 matches to talk about before getting into the awards. As we knew they were going to pop up on the network during this time, Case, we got the house shows of SB KENTo's Bravegate title defenses, first in Gifu against Problem Dragon, and then the big match, like the Mike Spears Produce Dream match, UT versus SBK in their hometown in Nagoya, that popped up there. And just like just to get it out there, SB KENTo should be considered like one of, if not like the most promising stars in wrestling under the age of 25 at this point. And if you're someone who's listened to the show since he's debuted, you've been on it with us, but it is actually like almost a crime now how good SB KENTo is right now.
I mean, I don't even know who else is in the conversation. It's like him and Hook, because I really do think with the way
Dante?
Hook, yeah, but Dante's not a star like this. He has to go through, the comparison's obvious, he has to go through a Ricochet-like transformation. I think Dante should absolutely be a part of AEW's plans going forward as a big deal, but he's not a star like this. I guess MJF is the other one. I don't know how old he is. He might fall into that 25 and under category still.
I think he's 24. So yes, he would.
Yes.
So
well, then yes, it is MJF and SB KENTo, and then a tier down Hook. And he's on that level. It's the only way I can describe it. And I, 2 years ago, came on December of 2019 after his debut match, and I said, that's the guy. That's the next Yamato. And I knew I was going to be right. I did not imagine I was going to be as right as I was.
And it's something, just because I had to look this up. MJF turned 25 in March, so he is not classified here. So it is, again, SB KENTo. I figure that just to be on the right side here. He still is like 25 and under. It's MJF here, but it's fascinating to see SB KENTo grow at such like a exponential rate, because you take these matches and they're both up on the network. They're considered director's cut. They have full camera production, no commentary though. And you see him basically give Problem Dragon the most consequential and best match that Problem Dragon's had since his last Bravegate match, I would say. You know?
In the history of Problem Dragon matches, it's this and the Maria match from 2016, and that's it. You know, last year we did about a half hour on all of the great Punch Tamanaga matches there are. We just did that segment for Problem Dragon.
Yeah, and it's not that he was a bad wrestler. He's just someone that got a lot of injuries, and they slotted him into a certain role because of those injuries, and that's just who he is now. And he had like an incredibly heated hometown match where the crowd was so behind him, having Yamato and KZ, like, just to get a sense of like why we're saying like that's it for Problem Dragon. They were classmates of Problem Dragon, KZ and Yamato. So that gives you a sense of like this guy's station, really. And they just had like this match that really rocked. And it seems like everything about this match was built towards, okay, SB KENTo, in a way, touring champion, coming to the guy's hometown. And then in front of his local fans, putting up the valiant fight, but it's not enough. SB KENTo is much better than him. The young kid puts him away with the SB shooter. And I thought that for what it was remarkable.
Yeah, this is a really fun match. It fits the billing of a hometown defense, because Problem Dragon plays the role perfectly of a Weasley underdog, not Weasley in the sense of him looking to cheat or get ahead, but that sort of weakling. Just, he's clearly not on SB KENTo's level, and he's never really presented as such, but he does have the power of the hometown crowd behind him, and in almost poetic sense, that carries him to make this a nearly even match at some points. He gets a few really big near falls on SB KENTo down the stretch, and it's exactly what you would hope for this. It is a really fun match that wouldn't have been out of place in Kobe or Kyoto or Fukuoka or any one of these smaller venues that Dragongate runs.
Yeah, and that's like the nice thing that I'm glad that they are willing to now, when they have like these big hometown shows, like we don't need to see the rest of the card, but being able to see like Problem Dragon get this Bravegate defense in front of his hometown. Also, Shoon Skywalker's hometown, his first hometown show since his excursion, which is wild. Just like a nice thing to kind of see there. And I thought that was kind of remarkable. And then this Nagoya Bravegate match case, we didn't talk too much about it. What were your thoughts of it?
It was marvelous. It was everything you would want it to be. UT looked like a fighting champion, even in defeat. SB KENTo, again, looked like a world beater 2 years into his career. I believe this was to the date, or maybe just a few days shy of his actual in-ring debut, that tag match with Yamato and Doi and Kamei that happened in this building, I believe, certainly in Nagoya in their hometown. You would have no idea that SB KENTo was only 2 years into his career. You would have no idea that in a realistic sense, given all of the injuries and all of the strife and all of the struggle that UT has had, that he is only 3 or 4 years into what I would label his legitimate career, post-millennials, whatever that middle part of the 2010s were. It's really not until the end of Tribe Vanguard, into the Dragongate generation, into Natural Vibes, that he became the wrestler that he is today, which by proxy is one of the best wrestlers in the world. And this was a chance where these two guys, almost in like a basketball game, where the two best players got on the court, they said, clear out, we're going one-on-one here, and we got to see that battle, and it was just a marvelous thing to say.
And I think that like we've had our little checklist, right, Case, of like what we need to see SB KENTo do, and he's been like checking off that list, and we've been reassessing our expectations of the guy, and he decided to have like this match, which for one came off like a total star coming out in his hometown, tossing snacks to the crowd doing SBK claps with it. A lot. Did you notice all the SBK signs in the crowd, by the way? The little like SBK placards.
Yes, no, it's crazy to think that really we've only had 3 months of him in his career that has been in front of normal crowds. And it was hard to say at that point whether or not he was gaining steam in any way with those audiences, but he is perhaps the most clear-cut example of someone who has had this 2-year run in COVID-setting crowds and is so clearly over. Like, he wasn't a star going into COVID, but he is going to be a star coming out.
Yeah, it's going to be so much fun. And then he has this match that he plays right into UT's playbook. And he's like, all right, you're the mini maestro. You're Yaveo. You're going to do your style. I'm going to fight through your style, and I'm going to win. And it just was phenomenal. It just was like things like UT like breaking out, like that crazy double armbar where he also had like his legs grapevined in a way, just doing like wild stuff. And then like the finishing stretch, like this was as hot of a Dragongate finishing stretch as we've seen in recent months. You know, I mean, you had UT going for the Bien Yave after after SB KENTo going for like the spinebuster and trying to go for the SB shooter. He goes for the Bien Yave. He pretty much rolls through, locks in the SB shooter. And while I'm throwing roses at it, other than Daniel Garcia, does anyone like, and I think that this camera work at this hometown show really illustrated this to me, Case. But does anyone have a sharpshooter that looks as painful and does like the little things to be like, all right, this is this guy's finisher. That's it. It's over.
No, this guy stands at like 5'5", and he has the meanest spinebuster in the game and somehow the best sharpshooter as well.
It's just amazing stuff. I want 4.25 stars here. Like this one, when we get into awards, when we get the match of the year list, it would not make a match in the year list, sadly. But it almost did. It could have, like, if it had maybe full production, if they had like there were a couple like quick edits there, if it was uncut, I could have gone 4.5 stars on this. But also, UT is my favorite wrestler in the company, so that's my bias again put on the table there. I love this match.
Oh, I wouldn't have begrudged you at all had you made this a number 10 vanity pick. As we get into our match of the year stuff in just a second, a final note I have on this: if you look at we'll start with the Gifu match, him and Problem Dragon here. That show drew 383 fans to it. Now, Mike made mention earlier, this was also the first time that Skywalker had wrestled in his hometown since before he went on excursion. They ran there in 2020. He was obviously not in the country at that point. And then they ran in April of this year, and Skywalker had to pull out because of close COVID contact. The show they ran in April drew 231 fans. The show in December, headlined by SB KENTo and Problem Dragon, 383. And then if you look at Nagoya, and we talked about this and how this crowd in particular in this building seems to rise every single time they run it now. In August, it was SB KENTo versus Kagetora to start this Bravegate run, 585 fans. And here with the two hometown guys in the main event, SB KENTo and UT, 713.
It's just insane. It's insane. And they don't go back to Nagoya until, I think it's not until March. Yeah, they don't go back into Nagoya, into the Congress Center until March.
Yeah, they're running I believe it's a smaller venue in Nagoya City in January, but that venue they will not visit for, the venue they ran in December, they will not visit for quite some time.
Yeah, so it's going to be fascinating. And Nagoya used to be a taping town. And maybe, they readjust these things. And maybe a couple times a year, they'll bring back Nagoya as a taping town. I would love to see full Nagoya shows. I would love, as they start this, Nagoya is not a small city. To be fair, this isn't like Sendai and Tohoku, which is a smaller region and it's just underserved. Nagoya is a major city in Japan, but it'd be nice to see this game back into the Infinity and taping rotation.
I could not agree more.
And you alluded to it, and I think it's probably about time to get into it. Let's talk about our awards case. We've done these last few years. We kind of change in and out of some categories each time, but after 2021, I felt like, at least for me, this was a harder award selection than it was last year.
Certain categories, yes, because last year, like I've said many times on the show, I think last year was a hallmark year for the promotion, even in the face of COVID. This year had its ups and downs, but the highs were quite high.
Yeah, so we have, let me see here. We have 10 categories that actually worked out quite well here. Match of the year, we have MVP, Rookie of the Year, Stock Up, Stock Down, Best Unit, Most Improved, Best Show, Best Smaller Show, and then 2022 predictions. What do you want to lead off with here?
Let us start with match of the year. Let us work down this list. That might not make the most sense, but that's the way it's laid out in my notes, and so that's what we're gonna do.
All right. So in this category, we have a top 10. And all the other ones, we have a top 2 here. Bottom up, should we go 10 to 1 here?
Oh, 10 to 1. And I've got an honorable mention. Do you have one?
I don't. I would have if I didn't delete my ones when I was working with this. No, so give your honorable mention.
King Shimizu and Susumu Yokosuka versus Kaito Ishida and Kazuma Sakamoto from July 31st. That was Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival, the Open the Twin Gate match.
That's going to be an interesting thing as we get to like talking about this and when we talk about show of the year, really, because I feel like this year really peaked at that weekend, and that was like a match that was like 4.25 for me, so it was just off my list. I guess I'll start with my number 10. This is my vanity pick. It is from Speedstar Final, August 1st. It is the Masato Yoshino retirement match where he teamed with his his partner. I think that's all needs to be said. It was Toyoshi versus Eita and BB Hulk. I went 4.5 stars on this one.
Yeah, you were higher on this as an in-ring match than I was. Obviously, the stakes surrounding it, the pageantry involved, it was a spectacle that if for some reason you're listening to this and you have not seen it, you need to go out of your way to see it. It does not make my list.
Yeah, it was something that I thought that it was Masato Yoshino really, putting it every last bit of him into this here. And it was something that I thought was special. He had a beautiful final match, and I really liked the synchronicity of having the other major member of World 1 with them. The last 3 members of the Big 3 or the Big 6 still in the promotion that were available, because Yamato, of course, won the Dreamgate right before that. And I thought it was really special. Like, the closest thing I would say is just that it was just really, really kind of special. Like, him doing like an Orihara moonsault in this match was one of those moments that I'm going to remember for like the rest of my time being a wrestling fan. So probably the rest of my life.
Yeah, very well put there. I have no complaints about that. A special moment, and that was one where I reviewed Kobe World on the 31st. You reviewed Speedstar Final, and I cannot compliment your work on that written review enough.
Well, thank you, buddy. Thank you. I had a pitch hit there, Sometimes I come in off the bench to help you out there, and I'm glad that you like that. What was your number 10?
I was going to come on this podcast and defend the Dragongate network for a minute, which is the bravest stance you can take in all of professional wrestling media, because all I hear is how hard this service is to use and how the shows go away too quickly and this and that and this and that. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, it's not ideal. I would love for these shows to just, stay on the network. But they do give you 7 days to watch them, and I sometimes feel like people act like they have to watch them live or the day of before they go away, and they do give you a decent amount of time to watch these shows. And then this afternoon, I went back to rewatch some of these matches for fun, and I went to the date that this show happened, and I was reminded that for some reason, while the Korakuen Hall shows and the Kobe Sambo Hall shows will eventually reappear on the Dragongate network, the Hokkaido shows and the Kyoto shows do not. And that is when I was reminded that I absolutely hate the Dragongate network, because my number 10 match of the year is Jason Lee versus KZ from the May 21st Hokkaido King of Gate show. I adore this match, and I'm annoyed that I had to go to other sources on the internet to rewatch it.
Yeah, it's something where I have some King of Gate matches in here, but this was really, like, we were really high on Jason early on in the year, but the performance he really, like, when it was televised that he had in King of Gate really kind of was the evidence that we needed for what we were saying about him. It just was something that with him, I thought it was really remarkable there. It did not rate with me. I'm right now talking as I'm filling to go through. I have both my notebooks up here, Case. I have my early 2021 notebook and then also my late notebook. But let's see what I have for this one here as I'm filling for time. I apologize. This is terrible audio.
May 21st, Jason Lee KZ.
Yeah, I had a 4.25. So I totally get where you're going for with this. I should have said that all of mine are 4.5 stars or better, and I'll say when we switch to 4.75. So
yes.
Yeah, no, you're justified with that. I have no beef there.
Yeah, same here with me, 4.5 or above, and I will note when we leave the 4.5 star territory. But for me, this is my style of wrestling: fast-paced, junior heavyweight action, lots of grappling, lots of striking, lots of huge near falls towards the end. Some of the flash pins and flash pin counters these guys were doing were out of this world. A phenomenal match between two of the best wrestlers in the world.
Absolutely. Moving up my list, it's another Jason match. Who would have thought? This one's early on in the year. This is from their first Cork and Hall show of the year. This was the Twin Gate match with Hulk and Kai defending against Jason Lee and Kota Minoura. And this was something that, like, I'm sad that they kind of deviated away from Mino Lee as like a top tier tag team. But I thought that this was like really awesome stuff with like Jason was basically selling the entire thing. He was taken out very early, and it was just another great performance of Kota Minoura, just trying to like fight back until like the closing stretch where it was a final flash in the FTX that I thought was really, really sick.
This was your number 9, correct?
Yes.
This was my number 9 as well, Mike. This is one of my personal favorite matches of the year. It will not make my overall top 10, but I knew I had to make a place for it in my Dragongate top 10. When I wrote the review for this at voicesofwrestling.com, this is when I really started to take into consideration the 3 years that Jason Lee had in Dragongate. Prior to this, the steps that he had made to better himself and where he stood in the pecking order of junior heavyweights as a whole. It was this match and his selling here that made me look at this guy and think, I don't know if there's anybody better at what he does than him right now. As an individual performance, Jason Lee's outing here is one of the best I saw in all of wrestling this year.
He just really had a phenomenal time. Like, it was just one of those things you kind of took a step back and you're like, wow, this guy is really on this other level that we've been talking about. I have the wrong date for this one, Case, so you might have to correct me here. This was one I think I had it down as May 14th, which was the King of Gate opening day during closed doors at Lapis Hall, but it had it been after that because they already had matches there. But this was Yamato and KZ during King of Gate.
Ooh, Yamato and KZ during King of Gate. That, for some reason, doesn't even ring a bell to me. But I will do what I can to figure out when that occurred. Mike, what did you like about this match?
It was just something that we got to see this run of Yamato that started really with like King of Gate, where we got to see his more pancrase-based style going up against KZ, who during this tournament, and something that I would have brought up when we were talking about the Jason Lee match against KZ, he was breaking out Yave during this in a way that like it's kind of weird to think that KZ did have a Mexican excursion, just none of it ever made tape, and we don't know if he actually wrestled a whole lot there. And I thought that was really, really a whole lot of fun in this tournament.
I am not seeing a listing for KZ versus Yamato in King of Gate.
I have this match down. I have it listed as Yamato versus KZ 5/14 release. When did this match happen? Okay. I'm going to look this up, Case, while you're looking.
Well, now I'm fascinated because there was that really good... I thought maybe you meant Yamato versus Akuda at first because they had that really fun match in Fukuoka.
Was that it? And my eyes glazed over. This is terrible audio. I apologize. Gosh.
I think you meant Yamato versus Akuda. Because I know you raved about that, because that was an excellent match. That just missed my cut. And I know you really liked it as well, yeah. Yeah,
that was it. I apologize. I was looking and flipping through my pages, and I had the wrong one there. Oh, no. I had the wrong name now there. It was Shoon Skywalker versus Yamato from opening day.
That was from the empty arena, and I will let you know my thoughts on that match, because it's one of the better matches I watched in Dragongate this year, but I chose not to include it in my top 10 because it happened in an empty arena setting, and I did not want to think about it.
Yeah, so let's just delete those last 2 minutes of audio. I'm not going to
Great.
cut this out here, but we're just going to act like it didn't happen. Yeah, what I loved about this match, as I have the notes right here, I liked the MMA Yamato and him using Shoon's body as a jungle gym. And like there was like this really ugly looking avalanche backdrop out of the Dojima Sleeper that was really sick. And in a way, this was setting the stage for the match they would have at Speedstar Final. And it was something that I thought was really kind of remarkable for me to give 4.5 stars to an empty arena match. You know, that's a level of sickness right there. But I thought this match was really kind of special, and it was really showing the chemistry between these two guys that we would see later on in the summer.
We will get to the Shoon Skywalker portion of my list shortly, but my number 8 features 2 guys who we've talked about already, King Shimizu and Susumu Yokosuka versus Hao and Kano from 11-3, the Gate of Destiny this year.
That was such a fun match. I think I was just slightly under. Yeah, I was 4.25 on this match. So what made it up to 4.5 stars for you?
It was the best use of both Shimizu and Susumu that I think there is. Susumu had a chance to trade strikes with these guys, very much trained strikers, guys that throw bombs in this Noah pairing. And they're much, much smaller than Shimizu, and he was able to throw them around. And it is here, after we were so delightfully surprised by the Shimizu and Susumu team at Kobe World and Speedstar Final, where it looked like, oh, this team is really something. I hope they have a prosperous run. This was their peak. This was them at the height of their powers against the perfect opponents in a really fun Dragongate versus Noah match. And I hope as we get into the new year that we see more of those pairings, because I really like the results that we had from them.
Yeah, it was something that, like, this was such, like, a weird and bizarre way, like, setting this up. Like, Kenzo Suzuki, like, slapping the crap out of Genki Horiguchi at every kind of thing. And it was like, all right, this could be something really cool. And it ended up being incredible in a way, playing off, like, common lineage. You know, we talk about the Luchares tree in a way, but this is, like, a different branch from, like, the Michinoku Pro guys. And I thought that was really solid as well.
I completely agree.
So my number 7, we started my Shoon Skywalker segment. We're gonna get even more deeper in here. This is from Champion Gate. This is the Dreamgate match, Shoon Skywalker versus Kota Minoura. And I thought that this was a major match for Kaito Ishida's career, like really like putting him, he was in his hometown, but so it helped out that as well. But I thought it was something that getting to see Shoon just really have to work through the knee issues in a way that was really kind of effective. There was the blaster on the apron that was really, really super sick. And it was something that it was like the step forward that was like, okay, Kaito Ishida is a main event player. And I thought he had it in him. And of course, like him and Okuda became the storyline, at least singles wise, of 2020. But seeing him do it with a contemporary kind of, and Shoon Skywalker, especially Shoon Skywalker on this Dreamgate run, I thought that this was really kind of phenomenal.
I'm going to hold off on my thoughts of Skywalker versus Ishida for later on in my list.
That's fair. So what is your number 7?
Yamato versus Coach Minoura from Dangerous Gate of this year. For as much as I hated Yamato's Dreamgate run, and in particular, the build to this match, where leaving Speedstar Final, the one thing we knew was that if Yamato won the belt, his natural first opponent should be Coach Minoura. It just made sense in storyline. It was a very clear A to B progression. And instead, we ended up with a triple threat match between Kai, Ben-K, and Masaki Mochizuki to decide Yamato's next challenger, and Kota Minoura luckily forced himself into that match, won it, and then challenged Yamato here. This was a classic Dreamgate match. We've talked a lot about the youth movement and Dragongate over the years. We've talked about the shifting house style and how this is not the promotion of Shima, Tozawa, and Shingo anymore. All of these guys have a new approach to wrestling, a new flavor, a new flair. Yamato versus Minoura was a match that would have fit in 2004, in 2014, and it fit in quite well as my number 7 in 2021.
Well, that's very fitting because that's my number 6 match, Case.
Fantastic. That's what I like to hear,
No, it's not.
Mike.
I'm really fucking this up tonight. I apologize. My number 6 match was, this was 4.25. This would have been my honorable mention. This was my last cut. So this would have been my honorable mention. My number 6 is Kota Minoura versus KZ at King of Gate. I apologize, listeners. It's been a long one for me.
The mic is crumbling under the pressure of the match of the year countdown. You threw haymakers early on in this podcast, just decimating New Japan's business plan, and you are gassed at this point. You don't have the cardio to do the award show.
Man, it's something that like I just go out swinging, I mean, first round knockout or nothing here.
Mike Spear story.
Go out swinging, first round knockout or nothing. The Mike Spear story. That's my second autobiography. The first one is Weird Things Happen to Me.
Interesting. My autobiography title is Often Anxious, Always Sweaty.
There we go. I mean, my performance in these award shows made me kind of sweaty, to be quite honest.
You need to take a break at the towel.
Getting the hoodie off as we're talking. So this King of Gate finals match, KZ versus Kota Minoura, we really got to see that this, like, in a way that you were talking about, that we got to see Kota Minoura youth movement here. We really got to see like the first thing of him being like a true single star and player, youngest ever King of Gate finalist, and just really like had a great chemistry of KZ. Awesome strike exchange. It was basically elbow smash versus a forearm strike with it here. A lot of like really interesting neck work from KZ, which I thought was kind of fascinating as well. And like the crowd really bought into like the bevel gear flash spin, the impact, and just like there was like a fireman's carry that he turned into a spider twist here, and it was just something that I thought was really kind of phenomenal. I thought KZ had a tremendous King of Gate, even though I thought of a match that he did not actually have earlier on here. So yeah, King of Gate, KZ versus Kota Minoura from June 3rd is my 6th match of the year.
My number 6. Shoon Skywalker, as we now get into his portion of the ballot. Shoon Skywalker versus Kazuma Sakamoto from Memorial Gate in Wakayama. This was on March 27th. Did you have this listed?
This is my 5th match, so let's talk about it.
Well, I am going to steal the talking point that Joe Lanza made, that this is a match that was so technically sound that it should be taught in wrestling schools. I, of course, notoriously, and I do not say this facetiously, was the first one to get aboard the Kazuma Sakamoto in Dragongate train. I greatly miss him. I thought he was a great asset to this promotion, and this was his absolute peak. This was him having a 20-minute singles match with the best wrestler in the company, and him being there right along every single step of the way. A marvelous, stiff, physical, violent Dreamgate match.
Yeah, and it was something that was kind of cool in this match to see Shoon Skywalker not be the bigger guy. I mean, he's such a lanky guy, and he put on so much muscle. Like, it's kind of, he really, in a way, has become like a prominent figure physically in the company. But being able to see him kind of break out stuff against Kazuma, who is stockier, I mean, he's a more bulk orchestra. He has the bulk with him there. It just was like stuff like seeing him like doing like a second rope monkey flip, where like making no sense for him to do that against KZ. He would instead do that to the floor, and just like playing up the character that Shoon Skywalker portrayed before Mexico in a way that I thought was really kind of like fascinating. It just was such a smart match, like doing like rolls throughs after the moonsault, and just came off like as a tremendous performance. And I thought this was a really phenomenal match, and it's something that as we get to talk about like other categories here, I think there's enough evidence here that I know that Shoon Skywalker in some camps gets a bad rap for being just a very risky wrestler. This match was like technically sound, as you were putting up there, that I thought was really phenomenal. And you like take a look at his title run. Basically, I'm not going to hide this. All of his Dreamgate matches that had an actual match this year ended up in my top 10 list. Like, just an incredible year from the guy.
No, he was, we talked about the SFM 50 earlier. He was my number 3 wrestler this year, behind Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson. So well done to Shoon Skywalker.
So what was your number 5 match?
My number 5, Shoon Skywalker, this time against Yamato, August 1st, Speedstar Final, this Dreamgate match. Skywalker on a personal level, I've determined has a really special place in my heart, because I've been reviewing this promotion for Voices of Wrestling for 6 years now. So I was a year into reviewing this when Skywalker and Ben K and Yoshioka and Hyo made their debuts. And Skywalker has always been my favorite wrestler of this bunch, just because he's been so ruthless and risk-taking and exciting in all of the different stages of his career. And even, by 2019, my vision of what his peak would be maybe challenging Yamato for the Dreamgate belt at a Dead or Alive or a Dangerous Gate, or realistically a Champion Gate in Osaka. The fact that Shoon took the leap that he did and stood in the ring with Yamato, the objective biggest star in the company, and looked on his level, if not better, in this match, was a very cool thing to see for me. Someone in my position, where I've watched this guy from day one grow, and I've covered him in Dragongate, from opening matches to the All Japan Junior Tag League to his hot streak in 2019, all the way to his Dreamgate match. This, in a weird way, this match just made it feel like all of the time I invest in this promotion is worth it to some degree, because I have now seen a young man come into his own and have a match like this. Like every other Shoon match, I'll use the same adjectives. It was violent, it was physical, and in a weird way, it was absolutely technically proficient.
So, two things. One, this match is higher up. I'll give my thoughts when I get to it. And two, I find it fascinating that you mentioned Shoon Skywalker in that light of when you started reviewing and following the promotion, because that's kind of how I got so attached to Akira Tozawa, was where he was when I started watching Dragongate. So it's really satisfying that this company does that in a way. And like SB KENTo, like how we've been talking about for the last hour or so, seeing this guy progress in this way, it's like one of the best things about Dragongate is you're able to see them be like, all right, this is someone we see something in. And it might not be immediately like SB KENTo. It might take 5 years like Shoon Skywalker, but it's always so rewarding to see that happen to someone.
Look, when SB KENTo wins the Dreamgate belt, and it is a win, not if, I will be popping champagne in my apartment. I might break edge for SB KENTo when he wins that Dreamgate belt, because it will be such a special moment for this podcast.
I mean, that will actually be the laptop show.
What? Hold on. What is the laptop show?
How we were threatening to do the laptop microphone show about if Kai won and Kai ended up winning. That would be the immediate.
I don't know if there was like a camming thing that you wanted us to do that I had it. I was like, we could do a video show if you want. I didn't know that's something you were interested in, but I'm going to keep my clothes on. No, yes, you do you, Mike. But yes, no, we can certainly make something happen when SB KENTo holds that Dreamgate belt above his head for the first time.
Absolutely. So now we are moving into my top four. My fourth match my fourth best match of the year is from Speedstar Final. It is the Twin Gate match. It is Natural Vibes defending against Dragongate and BK. And it's just something like with this match and with like this, like you talked about the How and Kano match that was so really phenomenal with this. It's just something that we got to see the great chemistry between Benkei and Shimizu. It's a real shame that we never got a Shimizu versus Benkei Dreamgate match, by the way, just as an aside. But it was like really neat to see that. And then you also got to see another generational kind of feud with like Susumu Yokosuka and Dragon Kid being revisited in a way. And it just was something that was just incredible stuff. Like there was an Avalanche Death Valley Driver. That was one of the most brutal things that I've seen. That was just absolutely insane. Shimizu and Benkei just like constantly trying to one-up each other in a big like power contest, and they worked this like a sprint, and then they started throwing bombs, and I thought that it was just absolutely phenomenal.
Interesting only because I liked the Natural Vibes versus RED match a little bit more, but with the way you sold this match, I am going to have to go back and rewatch it because I remember loving it, but you put that in a new perspective for me, Mike, so well done.
Hey, we got to see a world liner at Kobe World. like that's like an automatic like credit towards that there.
That's very true.
What was your fourth match?
It was a man we were just talking about. It was SB KENTo versus Jackie Funky Kamei, or actually this was his last match as Funky Jackie Kamei, the Open the Bravegate match from, was that October 17th? I have November, but I don't think that's right.
October 17th, correct.
October 17th, yeah. This is, I would say, the most talked about Dragongate match of the year. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, I would say that probably was, other than, Yoshino's retirement, probably like one of the standout moments, positive moments, not like Kakuta sadly getting hurt,
Ben-K getting knocked out at the end of 2020.
Right, yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I'll say this is my third match. So
Great.
this was my top 3. So, yeah, no. So what about this match really sold it to you to make this into strongly up on your list?
It's one of the best chop battles I've ever seen, and it came not between Kenta Kobashi and Kensuke Sasaki, two guys who you would expect to see a chop battle from. It came between two junior heavyweights who I knew this match was going to be special. I was excited about it going in, and they still just crushed my expectations. I expected this to be 3 3/4, 4 stars if we're lucky. It's in Kobe. That's a crowd that could go either way. But no, they stepped up to the plate here. They wrestled this match like it was the main event of the Tokyo Dome. And it was just another one of those deals of like, oh my God, SB KENTo, he really is. I've compared him to Adam Cole because I think back to what Jay said on our podcast in July, where he said, and he was sort of being facetious and he sort of wasn't, if SB KENTo was 3 inches taller, he'd have the Dreamgate by now. And I think the easy comp there is Adam Cole, because Adam Cole is undoubtedly one of the biggest stars in pro wrestling, and you think, what if this guy was 3 inches taller? I mean, it would be miraculous what he would be able to accomplish. But SB KENTo and MJF is another one of those deals where, at the start of this year, we were talking about how great SB KENTo is. This guy's such a star, but it's his in-ring work that is actually falling behind when it comes to his character and his match-to-match psychology and all of these other things he does. But just as the narrative changed for MJF in 2021 of like, no, this guy can actually wrestle. He's really, really good in the ring. The way SB KENTo closed his year, it's the same story. He is now an elite level wrestler when he gets the opportunity to do so. And this match was the first time where I really went, holy shit, SB KENTo's on another level in the ring. He took a step up here when I wasn't expecting him to.
Yeah, it's something that you threw your roses at SB KENTo. I'm going to defend my guy from the from that debut match. It was so great to see SB KENTo in this role of like this dominant heel champion, and the ring work has completely come together in a way that it has been remarkable to see, faster than anyone expected. But for me, this match was Kamei's coming out party. This was something that you really got to see him step up to the plate and say, like, yeah, I'm not going to be remembered just as KENTo's just dojo mate. I'm not going to be the guy who was on his bottom bunk while he was always on the top bunk. I'm not always going to be looking up at him, because he really like put on like a great selling clinic. Like there was the STF in here that was just incredible. Like I rewatched this match with the full production that was up on YouTube, and it blew me away. Like just the way he facially sells and the timing he did for like an acid drop counter and then doing a tornado. And I'm like, all right, this guy who I thought might have some issues and might top out as just like a Bravegate challenger, maybe a second and third in a tag team title match. He really had something here, and he really put it together here and really came together in a way that after like the injury and a little bit of a shaky start, like getting to see like, oh, this is why he is with Natural Vibes. This is why he's like teams all the time with KZ and with and being able to have Genki Horiguchi there. It just was phenomenal stuff. It was really special. It is the match that, as much as we talk about 12-1 2016, I feel like that 10-17 2021 will be like one of the matches for this class that we talk about, just as just an incredible performance for both of them.
Oh yeah, this is a match that we'll remember for as long as we cover this promotion. 5 years, 10 years from now, when we're looking back on the start of these guys' careers and whatever comes of the future class, when we're doing their 10-year anniversary pods, this match will be in the forefront of our minds. This was a historic match in the moment, and I think his legend will only grow as we go along.
So what was your top 3 match? What got bronze for you this year?
My bronze medal match, something that you talked about earlier, June 3rd of this year, KZ versus Coach Minoura in the King of Gate finals. I echo all of your sentiments. Just a phenomenal match when Coach Minoura looked like the hottest wrestler on earth.
Just, man. And he's still under 25 too. I think he's only 23. Christ.
Is that true? Is he really that young?
Yeah, because he came in as like a teenager.
Oh my God, I gotta look this up real quick. Coach Minoura was born in Oh my God, he's born in 1998. Jesus, he's the same age as
He
me.
just turned 23.
He was
just
born,
turned
yeah,
23.
he was born December 98. I was born February 99. He's the same age as me. Jesus Christ. I didn't realize he was that young. He carries himself like a 29, 30-year-old man.
Man, now you see why I got so much on my soapbox about how New Japan develops their talent.
Look, yeah, they haven't busted out a Coach Minoura in quite some time.
Well, they wouldn't have taken him. He's under 180 centimeters.
Yeah, you almost think like that's a bad system or something.
Yeah, it's almost like that's a completely counterproductive way to bring in talent. Top two now. This is where I get to 4 3/4 case.
Okay, great.
Just my denotation there. This is also from Speedstar Final. This is the Open of the Dreamgate title match. Yamato versus Shoon Skywalker. Yamato winning, becoming the first ever 5-time champion, the 33rd Open of the Dreamgate champion. And it's something where it's that they started this off case as a Shoon Skywalker match, like just like pedal to the floor. We're just going to go for it. I called in a review a Skywalker's destruction party, and seeing the fact that Yamato was willing just to play along with it and was totally game for it, and then you have someone that was just without an off switch, and you have Yamato, who was just able to persevere and get his way out of it with the Dojima sleeper so much here, and just was eventually he just had too much damage, and we finally had someone kick out of the SSW, and Yamato had to do 2 Galereas and then a Ragnarok there, and it just felt like such a moment. It was like, all right, he's putting the stamp on it. This is his final. This is like his big run. This was like, as the way he was saying, like that like he saw what Shingo was doing. He saw what Tozawa. Well, he said that he saw Tozawa as a superstar in WWE. I think that's probably the most generous way to describe what's going on with Tozawa in WWE here. And it just made me feel like, at least at this time, like this was like going to be like the landmark run, like case we were talking about all summer, like Yamato's like turning the time back and bringing back like 2009, 2010 Yamato, and he molded it into this match. And then we saw how things kind of played off from there, disappointingly, but he started off this ring with an absolute banger.
Yeah, I loved it. It was the high point of Yamato's year, and Yamato had a very good year. My number 2 match, as we also move into 4 3/4 star territory for me, is a match you mentioned earlier, Shoon Skywalker versus Kaito Ishida from Champion Gate in Osaka. I rewatched this afternoon. For a long time this year, it was my Dragongate match of the year, and by proxy, one of the 5 best matches I had seen this year. It is an incredible match. We talked a lot in 2020, and if you're a newer listener, you might not remember this, but we talked a lot in 2020, the first 8 months of the year, about how we felt like Kaito Ishida, as a wrestler and an all-around act, had so clearly surpassed Eita. And Eita was the leader of this heel unit, and we were frustrated that Ishida wasn't getting more of a spotlight. He was the Bravegate champion at the time, but we wanted more for him. And a lot of that conversation quieted down once Eita won the Dreamgate belt. He did it in such a marvelous way. But Ishida had this incredible 2020. He was a great Bravegate champion. He made that belt his own. He had those matches with Akuda, and he was as consistently entertaining as any wrestler anywhere in 2020. He cooled down a little bit in the latter half of 2021, but this match right here in March was a very good reminder that he is someone who I think at some point in his career will hold the Dreamgate belt for a short period of time, because he went into this match with Shoon and he decimated his leg, and it was violent and it was aggressive, and it was everything that Ishida does well. He was almost a Kenta-esque, Kenta in his prime, dickhead, and he tore apart this guy's knee. And Shoon is more guts than brain, and he fought through that pain. He fought on that knee, and he eventually overcame Ishida. And it is as good as it gets. It is a long match. It takes a long time to get to a notable finishing stretch where they're trading big moves and doing these big counters. But when you get there, after all the groundwork that they laid on their path to it, it is entirely worthwhile. It is such a satisfying match. It is one of the best matches I saw this year. And Ishida at some point will be a Dreamgate champion.
Yeah, no, it's something that like I feel like, and sadly, I don't know if we would ever get this. He probably has a really interesting story to tell of his career and leading up to this point. You know, like this in a lot of ways, he was a guy that, you know, after his neck injury, we didn't know necessarily what to come from him. And he had this very special match in front of his hometown. He's a guy who has like the best matches of his career in front of his hometown, which is not uncommon in this promotion, but it's something that interestingly, like as we talked about Nagoya and if we talked about Tohoku region with like Yamato being from Iwate and then the future kids all being from that area as well, we got to remember that he's from Osaka. And I think that'll be an interesting to see how much they lean on him with that in the future. So I guess this leaves us with our number one match of the year, Case.
I have a feeling we have the same number one match.
All right. We're not going to try to say this at 3, but my number one match of the year was from Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival 2021. It was the Dreamgate match, Shoon Skywalker versus KZ. Case, what was yours?
From Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival, July 31st, 2021, Shoon Skywalker versus KZ.
It had to be this, right? Like, it had to be this match.
I've had multiple people over the past month to reach out to me. They're doing match of the year stuff. And they've got their blind spots, and they've asked me what are the Dragongate matches I need to watch this year, and I send them a list of typically 5 matches. It's Skywalker versus KZ versus Ishida, KZ versus Minoru, SB KENTo versus JFK, and that 5th match, kind of depending on the person, I mix it up. Every single person, without fail, this is not hyperbolic, every single person I've sent this match to has commented after they watched it some combination of, oh my god, that monkey flip. When Skywalker monkey flips KZ off the apron to the floor, it is one of the sickest bumps I have ever seen.
It's just phenomenal. It's something that, like, in a way, it's just like psychopath shit, for lack of better words. Like words lost over seconds. Like it's just psychopath shit. It's incredible. It was just like such a special match. But like these are two guys that their style complements each other so well that both of them are willing to do the car crash kind of style, for lack of better words, of we're just gonna go full motion into each other, and we got that. And just like doing stuff like the BT bomb into the CDJ and just like getting the emotion there, like it felt like a moment for KZ. But you know, he figured out a lot of people on the way to winning King of Gate, but he did not figure out Shoon Skywalker. And just the story of Shoon Skywalker being like, I've taken care of all these RED guys. Now I need to look towards the past generation. I've taken care of mine. Now let's look towards the past. And then, you know, taking out one of the more endearing characters in Dragongate. That was like phenomenal. It just was one of those things that in a year where they didn't necessarily have the top line matches, even though as I look at my list, I feel like I'm almost lying a little bit saying that 4 out of my 10 matches are Dreamgate matches, but all of them have Shoon Skywalker in it. So maybe it's Shoon Skywalker had the top line here. This felt like a Kobe World main event. It felt like one of the better Kobe World main events in recent memory. And it just was phenomenal. I mean, it's something that going back and rewatching each time, I'm like, this match happened and this match was insane.
These two guys throughout their careers, there's been times where they've been wrestlers and have not even been considered as future main eventers. Both Skywalker and KZ, there are points in their career where you could tell me, oh yeah, they'll main event Kobe World one day, and I would have laughed at you. It just would have seemed impossible. But even when both guys made that jump to being an upper mid-carder, a top-of-the-line player, a guy that could conceivably challenge for the Dreamgate title, there was that question that loomed over them of if their style, if their charisma, if their presentation would transfer to the very top of the card, to the main event scene, and on the biggest stage, in the biggest match for the big belt, these guys knocked it out of the park in a match that I have seen universal praise for. Everybody that watched it is somewhere between 4.25 or higher. It is, like you said, an all-time great Dreamgate match. It's their second bona fide classic at Kobe World. There's nothing else I need to say. It's Shoon Skywalker versus KZ. Watch it if you haven't. And if you've watched it, go watch it again.
Yeah, something that you said that resonated with me is two guys kind of, you know, making that jump. And it's something that this was an interesting topic in the VOW Discord about SBK, who should be his next challenger, and Alan Forel brought up KZ here, and like the idea of, is it something that for KZ this would be like too much, him losing to SB KENTo? Like, was this like the last major trophy for SBK? And it made me think about, this is a guy who up until 2017 was pretty much counted out. Like, he was a lost boss, he was a jobber, he had that Bravegate run, but that was really it for him. And the fact that he made this jump up to being at Kobe World, winning King of Gate, even the fashion that he won King of Gate, winning King of Gate, and being there. Whereas you look at Shoon Skywalker, you look at the rest of the class of 2016, like, yeah, Ben K was there first because it had to be Ben K. He's older, he has the physique, they protected him, it was going to be Ben K. But after that, probably thought that you would see Yoshioka Oka there first, wouldn't you? Yuki Yoshioka.
Yes. Yeah, he was the more conventional of the picks, and yet it is Skywalker who's there.
Yeah, just was an incredible match. So do you want to run through your top 10 again, just so that we have it officially? I'll run through mine since I completely botched it as well.
No, that's okay. Let me run through mine here real quick. Number 10, Jason Lee versus KZ from May 21st. Number 9, BB Hulk and Kai versus Jason Lee and Kota Minoura from January 12th. Number 8, King Shimizu and Susumu Yokosuka versus Hao and Kano from November 3rd. Number 7, Yamato versus Kota Minoura from September 20th. Number 6, Shoon Skywalker versus Kazuma Sakamoto from March 27th. Number 5, Shoon Skywalker versus Yamato from August 1st. Number 4, SB KENTo versus Jackie Funky Kame from October 17th. Number 3, KZ versus Kota Minoura from June 3rd. Number 2, Shoon Skywalker versus Kaito Ishida from March 7th. And number 1, my match of the year in Dragongate this year, Shoon Skywalker versus KZ, July 31st, Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival.
All right, so my top 10. Number 10 was Naruki Doi Masato Yoshino versus Eita and BB Hulk at Speedstar Final on August 1st. My number 9 was for the Twin Gate, Hulk and Kai versus Jason Lee and Kota Minoura from January 12th. Number 8 was Yamato versus Shoon Skywalker. That was released on May 14th during King of Gate. Number 7 was Skywalker versus Ishida, March 7th. Number 6 was KZ versus Kota Minoura from June 3rd, King of Gate Finals. Match 5 was Skywalker versus Kazuma from Memorial Gate. Match 4 was Yokosuka and Shimizu versus Dragongate and Benkei from Speedstar Final. Match 3 was SB KENTo versus JFK from Kobe Sanbo Hall. Match 2 was Shoon Skywalker versus Yamato from Speedstar Final. And then match 1, like yours, was Shoon Skywalker versus KZ from Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival 2021 from July 31st. So let's go through our other award categories. First off, I feel like that we should get this one out of the way because I feel like we both have the same answer here. MVP, my MVP case, of course, had to be Shoon Skywalker, and my runner-up was KZ.
My MVP, Shoon Skywalker. My runner-up, Kota Minoura.
All right. I like that. That's bold. That's bold. Like, I was very close putting SB KENTo as my second place of my runner-up here. So, KZ, just for like the year he had, and just like main event in Kobe World, Natural Vibes going from a really awkward thing to being a really solid, like, just like in the fabric of the promotion. And it just made sense to me. Like, KZ was having fantastic matches with nearly everyone on the roster all year. Kota Minoura case, I have a feeling I know your argument for him as runner-up, but I'd like to hear it.
Well, this was a year where he dominated every facet of the game. He had a great tag team with Jason Lee. We talked about that. One of their matches made my top 10. He beat BB Hulk. He beat Diamante. He beat Eita. He beat Masaki Mochizuki. He beat Yamato. He ended up in a roundabout way beating Shoon Skywalker at the end of the year. This guy had great singles matches, consistently in the mix for match of the night on any show he was on. And he ended the year doing, like we talked about last week, the most compelling story in wrestling with him and Skywalker and the rest of Masquerade. He is a huge part of that, and he has been great in his role so far. So for me, this was a year when Kota Minoura is a 3-time Dreamgate champion and the biggest star of the promotion outside of SB KENTo. This is a year we're going to look back on very fondly to see him really take his game to the next level.
No, I totally agree with you on that. Let's do Rookie of the Year next case. Who was your rookie year and your runner-up?
I struggled with this award because with 6 rookies and La Estrella to some degree, there was a lot of directions that I could go, but I kept it simple. My rookie of the year, Riki Ihashi, and my runner-up, Ishin Ihashi.
I like that. I went a little complicated for me. I went with Takuma Fujiwara as rookie of the year, and I think my runner-up was La Estrella. I mean, as much criticism as I throw towards La Estrella when La Estrella is on, he is phenomenal. But I think Takuma Fujiwara really has shown in his short time that he is the pick of the class of 2021.
It's the 180 that people have done, and rightfully so, on Fujiwara from his debut, where again it was fine but unspectacular, to now again in a month of work winning your rookie of the year really says something about just the rapid elevation that he's seen. I went with the Ihashis. I think Riki is a future star. I've talked about his charisma. I think it's something that will resonate on a Generico, Shima, dare I say, Liger-esque level. I think he has that sort of charisma in him. Ishin Ihashi is a bull in a china shop, but I enjoy watching him every time I see him.
Yeah, he's going to eventually have a heel run that's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Like he's going to be a monster there. This is a new category that you proposed for us this year. Biggest stock up and stock down. Do you want to explain this a little bit?
Yeah. We entered the year, let's go to January 2021. Guys that were on the roster that a year later have really impressed us, have really revitalized their game in a way, and guys that might have had a monster 2020 that had a disappointing 2021. It's stock up, stock down. And for me, my stock up, biggest stock up of the year, goes to Hyo, and my runner-up is Jackie Funky Kamei.
So Jackie Funky Kamei ran away with this award for me. I mean, really, the last few months has solidified that as the person that, if we did breakout star of next year, I feel like that's it for him. Number 2, and I know this is going to sound like a very safe choice, is Kota Minoura. I mean, we saw where he really was in July of 2020, and we saw where he was now. But I mean, the guy had a Dreamgate match at 22 at a Big 5 show. Like, how can't you say that that's a massive stock up there?
I certainly have no arguments there. I'm not surprised at any of Minoura's success, and that's why I kept him out of this category. Whereas with both Hyo and Kamei, I am surprised at just how good of the years they had. Hyo is someone who you go back to the end of 2019, and he was still working dark matches on televised shows. He was a lost post in Mochizuki Dojo, the lowest ranked guy in what was practically a rookie unit. And in 2020, we saw him turn heel and become this fun character, a guy that we like seeing because we both really like him. And it was cool to see him get involved in some bigger picture things. And in 2021, in a shocking way, he has become an integral part of the day in and day out of this promotion in a way that I just never would have imagined.
Yeah, it's something that, like, with him, just really to kind of discovering himself, and Hokkaido being the big brain was kind of phenomenal, right? Like, he would have just kind of been in that role until he discovered himself in that way.
Yeah, this is, you and I think this podcast has really represented Hyo well throughout his career. We've always liked the raw skills that he's brought to the table, but even, 2019, 2020, I had largely given up on him being anything other than a fun guy to have around, but not a consequential player by any means. And this year we saw him take a step up in terms of his promo ability that gets raved about by everybody that speaks the language. And as a wrestler, I thought he had a very, very nice in-ring year. As for Kamei, I love him. I expected him to be good. I didn't expect him to be this good this fast.
Yeah, no, it's something that with him, it's just like the transition to being member of Natural Vibes wasn't necessarily the smoothest, but the way he came on in the fall, just like runaway winner for me. Stock down. Mine, you might say I'm being cheap with this, but given where they were and how kind of things turned out here, it's kind of hard for me not to note them here. My biggest stock down is Hip Hop Kakuta, just because like we haven't seen anything or heard anything from him since he got hurt and got surgery. And then along the same lines, the runner-up is Strong Machine J, of which I don't know what you do with him at this point. So those are my 2 there.
Strong Machine J is a very fair addition to this list. I had not considered him because he was hurt for so much of the year, but that is a very good point. For me, it was two guys in the same unit. It was Keisuke Ikuda and it was Ben K. I thought Ikuda was one of the best wrestlers in the world in 2020. The feud with Kaito Ishida was remarkable. My feud of the year, your feud of the year, the runaway feud of the year in the Dragongate universe. This year, I didn't think he brought a lot to the table. Now, his Bravegate reign was booked in a very weird fashion. I think there are guys on this roster that could have been handed the names he was dealt and could have turned it into gold, and I don't think Ikuda did that, and as the year progressed, he got bogged down by injuries in MMA, and by the end of the year, the luster that was there with him in 2019 and 2020 was gone. And by proxy, there's Ben K. And I think with English-speaking fans, there's a lot of Ben K panic. There's always people wondering why he's not in bigger matches, and I don't necessarily believe in that ideology, but he is a guy that from time to time I worry about. And when I think about 2021, there is no specific Ben K moment that comes to mind. And to me, he is a level of star where I need to be able to think of a Ben K moment at the snap of a fingers. And I couldn't do that.
Yeah, it's something that like we've talked about Okuda and kind of like his less than glorious fall, losing 2 matches in MMA in a very drastic fashion, and then also, just that Bravegate run. But Ben K, it's one of those things that I think that, and I was guilty of it. 2019 when he won the Dreamgate from Pac, it felt like, oh wow, this felt like he was the guy. And then, the thing about this company is that the belt and being the guy in the company, all your flaws will eventually come out. And we got to see them in full display. He kind of got it back in 2020 and then 2021. A lot like after he lost the belt to Naruki Doi at the end of 2019, he kind of just like disappeared and he never really appeared back. So I think they're justified with that as well. On my list, the next one I had was best unit. My top unit of the year was Masquerade. A unit that came together, and sad that it's probably going to be done in 2022, but just was a really special unit. Got 5 guys who complement each other very well. And then my surprise case was I had Natural Vibes as my runner-up.
I had the same order. I completely agree with you. Masquerade speaks for themselves. I think they're one of the best units of all time. Their in-ring all year was top-notch, and they ended the year with this incredibly compelling story. Natural Vibes 2.0 took a while to get going. Of course, they formed with a bunch of injuries surrounding this unit, but by the time we exited Kobe World and Speedstar Final, the last quarter of the year, we saw the value of this unit. We saw everybody fall into their role perfectly, and on a show-to-show basis, they continue to hit high mark after high mark.
Yeah, it is something that, it was very kind of awkward put together, but it's very clear now why they exist. And I think that that's one of those really special things. I'm jumping down on my list because I want to leave predictions for last. Most improved. I feel like we need to rename this award in the future, case. But who are your most improved wrestlers of 2021?
It was number 1, Diamante, number 2, SB KENTo.
Those were mine as well.
Really? Wow, yes.
I actually was hesitating putting SB KENTo there, but I was like, no. I went back after watching the matches. They was like, no, it has to be SB KENTo. Like, the kid's insane. The kid's insane. And I think in the future it is the Diamante Most Improved Wrestler Award because, holy crap, what a year he had. And I hope he is back in 2022.
Yeah, I've exhausted myself throughout the past calendar year of giving Diamante compliments and trying to find new ways to talk about him doing the same damn great job on every single show. And I'm out of words. At this point, I think he's one of the best wrestlers in the world, and that is incredible given the product that we saw in 2019 when he first came into the promotion. As for SB KENTo, he entered the year great. He finished the year somehow even greater. This kid's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's going to be such a fun thing to see where these two go next year. Do you want to do small show or big show first?
Let's do small show.
All right, so this is a category that we explained last year, but it is basically not major shows. The idea of like the monthly shows, you're not going to get your Kobe Worlds on this list. What were your best small shows of the year?
My best small show of the year was the July 9th Cork and Hall show. And my runner-up was the December 26th Kobe Sambo Hall show, with an asterisk being that the 5/14 King of Gate Empty Arena show was probably my number one, but again, I would rather just not think about Empty Arena wrestling.
So that Kobe Sambo Hall show was my best small show of the year. Just was a tremendous show. Great way to end out the year. My runner-up was the October 7th Corkin, the one with the all-out war, because that was such a cool vibe on that show. Just was a really fun show, and the other matches on that show were solid as well.
Yes, I very seriously consider the October Corkin Hall show as the one to list here, but I went with the July show instead. That July show opened with a BB Hulk, Kaito Ishida, and Kazuma Sakamoto versus JFK, King Shimizu, and UT 6-man that I gave 3.5 stars. There was a 4-star Masaki Mochizuki versus Kota Minoura match on that show. There was a really fun RED versus Masquerade match, which led to an Agan Iso appearance. The final Masato Yoshino match in Corkin Hall, which was absolutely terrific. And then the no-rope lumberjack match between Yamato and Kai that I loved.
Yeah, that was my number 3 on my list. Just was like, for Corkins being not as heavy as they once were, they ended up having some really fun ones. Best shows of the year, my runner-up was Dangerous Gate, and my show of the year was Speedstar Final. When I was going through this list, case, I had 4 stars or better matches at Speedstar Final, so it had to be that one.
Yeah, I went Kobe World as my show of the year and Speedstar Final at number 2. That was far and away the best weekend this promotion had this year.
Yeah, it's just I said this in my review, and now with like almost 5 months of hindsight, I think that I sent this review that I thought that Absolutamente from 2002, which should be up on the network within the next year, which is great. And I thought that it was replaced by Speedstar Final. I still think it is. Like, just like the moments there, and then the way that the Yoshino retirement match touched me in that way just was phenomenal. I mean, you closed the show, at least for me, with a 4.5 star Twin Gate match, a 4 3/4 stars Dream Gate match, and then Masato Yoshino's retirement. It's kind of hard not to have that be my show of the year.
Oh, it was absolutely tremendous. It was a really, really fun weekend of wrestling that I will forever look back very fondly on.
And to close out the awards and close out this episode of Open the Voice Gate, our 2022 predictions. And I'm intrigued by yours, Case. So let's just get at it. What is one of your predictions for next year?
Well, I'm going to give you both of mine, Mike, because they tie into one another. Very bold predictions. I'm a very bold man, Mike Spears. You know that very well. My first prediction of 2022 is that the Dead or Alive cage match in Aichi, Japan will be Shoon Skywalker versus Kota Minoura versus the man formerly known as Dragongate versus Jason Lee versus La Estrella versus Yuki Yoshioka. And Yuki Yoshioka will lose his hair in that match, and that will somehow play out into a Kobe World Pro Wrestling Festival main event 2022, Shoon Skywalker versus Kota Minoura.
Okay, that's spicy. Yuki Yoshioka shaving his head. He has a good head of hair, Case. Why would you wish that upon him?
He lost his mask, but he didn't lose his mask in the right way. And this is the way that Dragongate is going to finally put that feud to bed, by costing him his hair. Those are going to be the last 2 guys in the cage. Dragongate, a handsome man without the mask on. I don't know if he'd be a handsome man bald. And he is going to outlast Yoshioka and shave the former Dia Inferno's hair off.
I like that a lot. So I do have Dragongate involved in one of my predictions. I think Naruki Doi, when he starts up his new Hot Boy unit, he's going to find a new tag team partner. You know who's going to be his next great tag team partner? Like we've talked about, Masato Yoshino and Naruki Doi will be forever etched in granite about being Dragongate's like most famous tag team. And then there are people, and I'm one of them, that I think that Naruki Doi and Yamato had better matches together than Doi and Speedstar. But his next great tag team will be with Dragongate, and I think we're going to get a big Twin Gate run of those 2 this year.
That would be sick as hell. I would really like to see that.
It just made sense, like those 2 guys, like styles, and like the idea that you would think that like it's not 1-to-1 Yoshino and Dia, but I feel like that it's not exactly plug and play, but I think they complement each other very, very well. Yeah. So my other prediction, and this is my Kobe World main event. And I need to do a little bit of backstory here. I think someone's going to go on the Royal Road this year. I think we're going to get a Royal Road this year, which is you end up getting the turned on in the cage, and then you win King of Gate, and then you win Kobe World. You know who I think is going to have that happen to them?
Who's that, Mike?
Eita. I think Eita's going to get his moment in front of the crowds. We've talked about in recent shows about how popular of a star is. He's going to get his big face turn and his big face run this year. And you know who I think he's going to be facing for the Dreamgate at Kobe World? And you know who I think will be walking to Kobe World as Open the Dreamgate champion?
Is it Kai?
SB KENTo.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay, well,
imagine the stakes I just put out there and the pieces that need to be moved to have that happen. I think SB KENTo will win the Dreamgate at Dead or Alive in front of his hometown crowd.
Oh boy, that is a prediction that I would like to see come true. Now, I have been on record. I pencil in 2023 as the year that SB KENTo wins the Dreamgate belt. But look, if it happens in May of 2022, I'm not going to complain.
I'm done doubting this kid.
Yeah,
I'm done at this point. He makes me actually angry how good he is. Like he has broken any sort of scale, and I think 2022. Yeah, he'll lose the Bravegate, but I think he's going to defeat Kai in front of his hometown crowd, and then he's going to have to go up against the guy that got him into RED, the guy recently turning face. And then it's going to be Eita. We're going to overdrive the Mirage. It's going to be fantastic.
I think Minoura is going to take the belt from Kai, and Minoura is going to enter and leave Kobe World as Dreamgate champion.
Oh. Oh, Shoon. Oh, Shoon. Oh, poor guy. You escaped the cage and you're going to Kobe World, but you're not winning the title there.
Well, I hope either of those predictions come true, because that could mean we're in store for a very, very fun year.
Yeah, this is going to be a whole lot of fun. Well, Case, I feel like that. I said this was a compliment sandwich show for me. You know, I came out swinging. I got gassed out, but I got it back towards the end. But we'll be back next week. That they did not announce a card yet for the upcoming Open the New Year Gate show. They're starting Kness's final tour. They're calling it the Final Burst Out Kness Forever Tour at KBS Hall in Kyoto on the 8th. They've announced rosters here. They do not have a full card, but we'll be back next week to talk about it.
I'm looking forward to it.
So you can follow the show at Open Voicegate. You could follow Case _ in your case. You can get mad at me for what I said about how bad New Japan is at preparing for the future at Fujiwara. That's going to do it for this week's Open the Voicegate. We'll catch you next time. Take care.